Then when you are regenerating tissue, you're doing exactly that. And what happens is basically this. I'm going to give you a visual here, and this is going to make sense to you. So make sure you're watching on the screen here. So let's use a muscle or a tendon, because that's really what we're focusing on most for the running. So you have these fibers, right? Welcome to the Run Elite Q&A, and we're going to be talking about the healing process today, the healing process. So when you do something to your body, like let's take an obvious injury, like a cut or something like that. There's different phases that you go through in order to turn that from a bleeding wound into all better. And when I was in sport medicine school, they teach us 3 phases. If you were to look it up online, you might even find 4 phases, but that 4th phase is kind of, they kind of overlap. So we're going to talk about this today. And the reason I want you to know about this is just so that in your mind, you have an idea of, if you have an injury, where you are in this healing phase, because you might take different actions, such as, do you want to apply ice or do you want to apply heat? Well, it depends where you are in the healing process. Do you want to rest or do you want to cross-train, lightly recover? Depends where you are in the healing phase. So we don't need to talk about, the biochemical things that are going on, because you don't care. What matters is that generally what's going on in these different phases and the time frames for them. And I want you to have just a rough, very rough understanding of what's going on so that you know how to apply it to your running. Should I be icing, heating, resting, stretching, strengthening? What should I be doing? And I'm going to give you just a little bit of advice for each of those phases of what you can do. So here we go. I'm going to use the analogy of an actual injury where it's obvious, like it's bleeding, like a cut or something like that. But I want you to understand that injuries to soft tissues and even to bones, your body doesn't really know. Does your body know if you've cut yourself and it's open to if your wound is open to the environment, or if you've bruised yourself and there's bleeding underneath the skin, but it's not open to the environment? Your body in some ways doesn't really know. So it's going to respond the same way. So if you have a severe cut, for example, is your body going to respond differently than if you have micro trauma from a really difficult run or a nagging injury? Maybe you start to strain a muscle and it starts to hurt, but it's not like this wound, right? It kind of is. It's an injury. And your body's going to respond the same way, at least at the cellular level, and at least in these phases of healing. So whether it's a cut with a kitchen knife, God forbid, or some overtraining and a strained muscle or a strained tendon, or a sprain in a ligament, or a plantar fasciitis, which is inflammation of a fascia, which is a connective tissue. Regardless of what it is, you're going to go through similar, if not nearly identical, process of healing. So here we go. The first one, and I want you to just hear this, but then we're going to throw it away because it's not really part of the healing phase, but it's the first thing that happens. And that is when you start to bleed. When you start to bleed. And you might call this hemostasis, but it doesn't matter. You just call it bleeding. So when you injure yourself, there's obviously, you've witnessed this before in yourself, right? That there's blood that comes out, but you want to stop that. So your body does vasoconstriction. And this happens within seconds or minutes, and maybe up to days if you had a bad injury. And your body's going to take vasoconstriction is, I want you to I'm setting the bar for when we talk about icing and heating. So you have a blood vessel, right? Like this tube, and I'm going to look down it. It's a blood vessel, and your body can constrict it or dilate it. And so vasoconstriction is what happens, what your body does as a defense if you're bleeding, right? Because you don't want to bleed out all your blood, so you constrict. All right. And essentially, you're just going to constrict until you can stop the bleeding, like a clot can happen. All right. So even on a small level, if you go for a really hard downhill run, you're on a very small level, you've ripped tissue apart, you've hurt things. There's maybe a little bit of blood, a little bit of edema, a little bit of swelling, a little bit of fluid that's inside of a cell. The cell is hurt and that fluid leaks out. And that's what we call edema, right? And that could be, intercellular fluid. It could be blood. It's edema. Now you have a small amount, this is swelling, right? So that's what happens when you hurt yourself or if you overtrain or have a hard workout. And the first thing your body's going to do is vasoconstrict. All right. Now this is complete within a small amount of time. And very soon you're going to move into what I'm going to call the first phase of healing. And this is acute inflammation. Acute inflammation. Acute means that it's happening now, not chronically. Acute is like, it just happened. Inflammation. Let's talk about inflammation for a second. Inflammation has this really bad rap. Oh, I'm inflamed. We don't want that. Your body's in a state of inflammation. Yeah. You generally don't want to be in a chronic state of inflammation. You don't want any of your tissues to be in a chronic state of inflammation. But our bodies aren't dumb. We don't inflame a tissue because our body messed up, because it's bad to inflame. We inflame a tissue because it's necessary. And what happens is in inflammation is this: instead of constricting the vessel will dilate, vasodilate, they call this. Now, why would you want to do that? We just constricted to stop the bleeding. Why would we now dilate? The reason is because the body recognizes there's an injury there and is going to give the maximum amount of nutrition, maximum amount of basically supplies, you can call this, is you're going to mobilize the armies and send stuff basically to the injury site. And by vasodilating, you create a bigger pool. So instead of a kiddie pool worth of blood, you now have like an Olympic-sized swimming pool worth of blood. Lots more oxygen, lots more white blood cells to come and clean up debris, lots more things that you want. So you vasodilate. Now, this comes with a couple of things that I'm sure you might be aware of. Now, with inflammation comes the following. You get pain. You get redness. They call it erythema in the medical world. But you might just notice that it's kind of red around a place that you have injured. You might notice heat coming off of it, and you might notice swelling. Okay, those are the four. So you'll notice pain. There could be pain, just like throbbing pain, or if you touch, there's pain. It could be redness, could be heat coming off, could be swelling. Now, you might even notice this after a really hard workout. You might even notice that your muscles actually feel hot. Well, there's inflammation going on in there. So this is the part of the healing phase that happens from basically day one through a while. We'll call a while up to a week, but it's really going to be on the order of 6 to 7 days. You're going to have acute inflammation. Now, if the injury is more or less severe, it may be 4 or 5 days, but it's going to be at least 4 days and up to 7 days. All right. So you have this time frame where you understand I have acute inflammation. What do you want to do? And I'm going to tell you what to do as we're going. What do you do during acute inflammation? Well, number one, you stop injuring it. So you don't run again. Or if you broke your arm, you don't break it again. You make sure that is locked up and casted and you protect it. So if you have plantar fasciitis or if you have a muscle strain, you stop. Don't work out. You're not trying to heal anything faster. You're trying to just let the inflammation happen, get the nutrients that you need, clear out the debris, and just let it kind of settle down. All right. So what can you do to enhance this? Well, you can't really do anything. It's a misconception that you can do something to speed up healing. What you can do is you can optimize the healing that naturally happens in your body, and you can just take away putting the brakes on. So you can take away things that will slow down your healing. Here's a tactic that you can use. You can ice. Okay. Ice is the appropriate modality for acute inflammation. How do you ice? I'm going to give you your prescription here. If you use ice bags, you want to put it on wherever it's hurting for 20 minutes, and then you take it off for 20 minutes or more, and then you can put it back on, and you can cycle this as many times as you like in a day, but 20 minutes on and then at least 20 minutes off. If you keep it on for 10 minutes, you don't get the therapeutic effect. If you keep it on for above 30 minutes, you can actually increase the inflammation. I won't get into how. I think that's beyond the purpose of this call, but your body tries to defend itself against frostbite and basically reverses what you're trying to do. So 20 minutes, that's how you ice. Now, the exception is if you use ice water. You actually want to do 12 minutes if it's ice water. And ice water is really good for your hand or for your foot or something with a convoluted surface. Maybe even your knee, depends. If it's your quad or something like that, you can put ice on it pretty well. But if it's convoluted like a finger, how are you going to ice, around a finger? It's kind of hard. So ice water is good. Ice water, because it conducts quicker, 12 minutes. Okay. So now you know what to do during acute inflammation. in the presence of an injury that you would even call an injury, this makes sense. What about after just a hard workout? You want to treat it like a very small injury. So you're going to rest, i.e. not continue to hurt it. You're going to sleep, stop running, and you can take an ice bath. You can soak your legs in ice water. You can go to a nice river, a nice creek. I'm doing that throughout April. I'm doing it every single day. Did it yesterday. It was pretty cold, but it's honestly kind of pleasurable. And if you don't have access to that, ice in your bath. Okay, number 2 is the proliferation is what the stage is called. You can kind of think of it as regeneration. Okay, this one is a little bit more important. I wouldn't say more important, but more, you can do more here. So during inflammation, you want to ice and you want to stop. You want to rest. You want to stay hydrated, all these things. Then when you are regenerating tissue, you're doing exactly that. And what happens is basically this. I'm going to give you a visual here, and this is going to make sense to you. So make sure you're watching on the screen here. So let's use a muscle or a tendon, because that's really what we're focusing on most with running. So you have these fibers, right? So I'm going to pretend that my hands are muscle fibers, and they kind of line up in a direction that they pull. So, I'm just trying to give you a visual here like this. Now, when you injure it or even train really hard to the point to where there's like a micro injury, right? What's going to happen is little boop, boop, it's going to fray, almost like a rope that starts to boop, fray a little bit. And if you injure it enough, it'll pull away. And that's really bad. Hopefully you're not doing that. But on a very small level, you've just injured it a little bit on a tissue level. Now, what happens is this. Your body takes collagen, like in your nose, in your ear, kind of different kind of collagen, but collagen throws it down there as glue. So it starts to break and you take collagen, throw it down, it binds it all up like glue and holds it together. This is good, right? If you hurt yourself, you don't want your arms to, you don't want the tissue to start falling apart. So you glue it all together. This is good. This is what happens after inflammation. And the collagen isn't muscle. It isn't or a tendon. It's not what the tissue should be. It's just glue. So understand that you're building up. This is what scar tissue is. You're building up like a ball of stuff, and the stuff isn't really useful except to hold it together. But that's how you get, scars on your skin or scars in your muscle tissue. That's what it is. It's collagen fibers. Now, this phase is going to last you anywhere from the end of inflammation. So we're talking about 6 days. You're going to start this phase, and they all overlap. Okay. So you might even start at about 4 days, but 6 days up to 3 weeks. Okay. So you can kind of think of this as 1 week to 3 weeks. It's a little bit shifted towards, the 5-6 day mark to 3 weeks, but that's what you're doing. So this is why in your phases of training, we talk about base training, support training, specific training. And I tell you guys that instead of tapering, what you do is you just do your hardest week 3 weeks before race day. Remember this in your trainings? The reason is so that you have 3 full weeks in order to basically heal your body from the hard workload that you did. You don't want to enter your race healing. You want to enter your race healed, right? This is one of the rationale for why your hardest week is 3 weeks before race day. So 1 to 3 weeks, roughly, you're going to be regenerating. Now, here's the one thing that's really important here. Listen closely. In this phase, you do this thing that's called capillary budding. And in short, it's just imagine that you have you have an artery, right? And eventually it's going to turn into capillaries. So you have all these nice little capillaries that are feeding blood to your tissue. And when you injure it, you go chop, chop, chop. It chops it severs basically the blood flow to an area because there's an injury. Now you start to, just like the buds on the trees outside, you start to bud, whoop, 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 like this. You start to grow new capillaries. It's called capillary budding. It happens now during this 1 to 3 week phase. When you do that, this is really important. These buds, they will grow into new capillaries. It's amazing. That's how our body heals itself. But if you start to bud and then you go and you do another hard workout again, or you injure it again, you will kill these buds and they will never grow back, ever. That means you lose blood supply to a certain area essentially forever. Now, your body's pretty smart. It will come in with other capillaries and re-innervate to get a blood supply there. But this is an uphill battle. You don't want to do it. So the key is you really don't want to re-injure yourself after or during this 1 to 3 week phase. Okay, so if you have an injury, then you have to kind of nurture it and be loving to it and be nice and easy if it were a severe injury that you really don't want to come back or haunt you, you need to take 3 weeks minimum to allow this phase to complete. If it's a small injury from training, and we wouldn't really call that an injury, we're just going to call it, trauma, micro trauma from a hard workout, then you want to be mindful for 3 weeks that your body might be susceptible to injury, and you just kind of train easier. You don't do you wouldn't race a marathon within 3 week periods, right? Race it really all out and hard and expect that you're going to recover. It wouldn't work like that. Okay. Now, finally, the final phase of healing is called remodeling. Now, remodeling starts at about the 1 week mark. Remember, there's an overlap here. It starts as early as the 1 week mark, and it'll go on forever. It can go on for 2 years. Now, what this one's important, and this is where you can really make a difference in your recovery. Remember that collagen that I told you gets kind of thrown down and it's glue? Well, you don't want to keep that as glue in your body. So what do you want to do? You want to turn that collagen into muscle or tendon or ligament. You want to turn it into something. How do you do that? You move it, you give it the stress that the tissue you want it to turn into needs. So a muscle, for example, what does a muscle do? A muscle contracts and a muscle stretches, and that's it. And it hangs out there and takes a nap, right? That's what it does, contracts and stretches. So you're going to turn this scar tissue into muscle or into ligament by lightly contracting it, easy runs, walks. You're going to use the muscle, whatever muscle it is, right? You're going to use it lightly. If you use it heavily, you might hurt it again. Use it lightly, and it gives that stretch to it. And what that'll do is it'll take those collagen fibers and it'll turn them into muscle. And now instead of a blob of scar tissue, you have a smaller blob of scar tissue, and some of it turned into muscle. You can also stretch it. Nice, easy stretching. And just daily movement will do this. And it'll, again, turn that scar tissue into muscle tissue. Now, here's what you can do to accelerate this in your final phase. Number one, you can now apply heat. Remember, we ice when we're trying to limit the inflammation. You don't have inflammation now. You just have scar tissue and loss of range of motion. So you want to now apply heat. You can be more loosey-goosey with how you apply heat. You can use a heat pack. You can use a hot water, hot whirlpool, hot shower, different kinds of things like this. And depending on the temperature that you use, I just do it to where it feels good, honestly. 12 to 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes is good, depending on how hot it is. All right. But I'm sure you know how to heat yourself to loosen up. Just take a hot shower. That would work. The second thing that you can do, this will be the last thing that I share with you here, is massage. I'm actually going for a massage when we're done with this. I'm in high training right now, and I'm getting massage once a month right now. And I might even up that to once every 2 weeks before my race. You can give yourself a massage. Now, why do you do a massage? There's all kinds of reasons. There's different massage techniques. We're not going to talk about those. We're just generally going to talk about massage. And here's why. Remember those fibers that we just talked about, and you throw collagen down and now there's this blob, and you start to realign the fibers and use the muscle, and it turns into scar tissue, into muscle. What about those collagen fibers that weren't lined up? They went down randomly. What about the fibers that instead of the collagen, instead of lining up like this and now can turn into muscle, what if they lined up like this? You can pull this way all you want, and it's going to stay collagen fibers unless you massage. Now you go into that tissue and you massage it and you break that scar tissue down, and your body, it'll either go into your bloodstream and you'll clear it away. Your lymphatic system will clear it away, or it'll realign and give it another chance to line up with your muscle. And then you go stretch and do light workouts and it'll turn back into muscle. So now you take a ball of scar tissue that was this big and you massage, and now it's only this big, and you work out. And then you do it again the next day or the next week, and you break it down, you break it down, you break it down over time. This will take time. Okay. So that's the final thing you can do in this phase, 1 week, but really we're talking about this. This really happens from like the 3 week period on. So that's the way I want you to think about it. From 3 weeks on, you want to be lightly massaging. You can do this with your hands. You can get a massage. You can get an electronic percussive massager. You can just punch yourself. You're probably doing these things intuitively anyway. And then you can heat as well. You actually want to do it in the reverse order: heat first, then massage. And that's it. So I hope I've given you a couple of hacks that you can use for your training right now. I don't want to go in any more depth on this. If you have questions, you can ask and I will clarify It gets only more complex from here. So to recalibrate from here, here's what happens. You go out for a hard workout, or if you get injured, roughly your first week, you're in inflammation. So you want to ice and you want to not re-injure. Number two, now when you're regenerating, you want to be lightly working out, but you got to be really careful not to kill those capillary buds by hurting it again. But you can start working out again. And again, you're using ice if there's pain. You can use heat towards the latter portion of it if there's no pain. Then from 3 weeks on, you want to use heat and you want to use a massage in order to break up scar tissue and realign it. And the common thread throughout all of this, except for when you first hurt it, the common thread is you want to keep moving, keep using it, keep stretching, keep doing light workouts. That's the common thread. And that's true everywhere except right after you get hurt. There's a period where you don't do anything at that point. You just rest it. Okay, so I hope you understand a little bit more about the healing phase, and we will get into our Q&A now.
Hey, if you liked that video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And the best way to give back is to take the link for this video and send it to just one of your friends. It really helps us grow, and we appreciate it. Thank you. We'll see you on the next video.